I'm Riley,
And I'm Roni,
and this is the Plan to Eat podcast.
where we have conversations about meal planning, food, and wellness to help you answer the question, what's for dinner? Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about how you can use up food that you have in your house to avoid food waste. Riley and I mentioned this in the last episode that food waste is one of our least favorite things when it comes to the kitchen. So we're spending this entire podcast talking about how you can use up those leftovers, make sure that ingredients don't get forgotten in the fridge or the pantry or the freezer, wherever they're forgotten. We know that everybody wants to be able to cook the food that we have, but sometimes remembering to thaw the things and keep track of items that are left open in the refrigerator, it gets messy. It can get messy. So we're going to talk about how you can meal plan to avoid this and, I think just like other food tips to be able to avoid waste.
I think the first thing we can jump in here with is we can never say this enough, right?
Yeah.
Plan less meals. Plan less meals.
I think we said this every podcast for the last 4 months.
Yeah.
In
Planning
one shape or form, we've said it every podcast.
Planning less allows you to have space to use up those ingredients. So
Yeah.
it's not that you need to have less meals on your meal plan because you're going to go eat out. It's so that you have space to use up the ingredients you have. And you might not have a plan for those ingredients, but you have at least a meal to eat them. This is a problem that I run into when I have house guests. I plan every single meal, and then I have leftovers. If I do not accommodate the leftovers or the ingredient overflow, then I'm going to end up with a lot more waste. And so if I can plan less, even when I have house guests, and I can say, okay, like, well, here's what we have left over. What am I going to make with it? And just be creative one night. Or we have tons of leftovers. It's going to be leftovers for lunches every day or one evening. Or, wow, we have a lot of chicken left over. What can I turn this into? Chicken salad or chicken sandwiches or fill in the blank. It just giving yourself space on your meal plan just allows you to use up all these leftover ingredients. Even if it's not the most pretty meal or not the most like well-rounded meal, at least you're not throwing those ingredients away.
Right. I think that I've mentioned before, I often will put on my meal planner that Thursdays is often our leftover night because by the time Thursday comes around, we've cooked a meal Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There's bound to be leftovers from one of those recipes or all of them. And they're just like a spattering of leftovers. And Thursday night, I just say, we're eating whatever is in the refrigerator. I am not cooking tonight. And if for whatever reason we don't actually have leftovers, it's fine. We've got a frozen pizza in the freezer, or we can go out to eat or something instead. But it is really helpful to avoid food waste if we just have it on the meal plan that we're going to have leftovers one night.
We had breakfast for dinner on the meal plan, which is made up of ingredients that I'm going to either eat for actual breakfast or they will not go bad today.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I have sausage or some kind of breakfast meat, frozen biscuits, or if I was going to make biscuits, like none of those ingredients are going to go bad. Eggs, I'm going to eat those again. Yogurt, we'll eat that for breakfast the next day. But breakfast for dinner being on my meal plan this week really helped because I made ramen and it made an exorbitant amount of ramen. And I didn't overdo it. I don't know what happened. It just made a lot of ramen. And so we had it for dinner the next night, and I actually had it for lunch today.
Oh, wow.
And so it made so much extra, but it allowed me to just pause the breakfast for dinner. We'll have that another night. It's no big deal. No harm, no foul, nothing's going in the trash can. And I used up all those leftovers. But that meal, kind of like we've talked about with having like a pantry staple meal, breakfast or dinner can work that way because it just gets moved down or gets moved to actual breakfast. And it allows you to have that night on your plan. Kind of like you said, we're going to eat leftovers tonight, but if there's none, we'll do something different.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think that you brought up a good point with when you have house guests. And I think there is a tendency to feel like, well, leftovers isn't good enough for when we have guests over. But I genuinely think, and I just think this probably from my own perspective as being a house guest in somebody else's house, that I'm just happy that somebody is feeding me and I didn't have to go through the work of thinking about or preparing a meal. And I'm like, I don't personally care that much about going to somebody's house and they're saying, oh, well, we had a casserole last night and there's leftover casserole, so we're going
Mhm.
to eat the casserole again. I don't personally care about that. That would actually still make me very happy.
Yeah. It doesn't bother me when I'm especially with family, it doesn't bother me. I mean, I like that we're not wasting food.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking, like, I
Yeah.
think there's an element of being a host or
Mhm. Oh,
hostess
yeah.
where you think,
Mhm.
like, it's not good enough. I need to make something new and unique for every meal that
Mhm.
these people are at my house.
Totally.
Yeah.
That I think it does feel that way as a hostess, like it is not good enough.
Yeah.
I try to not do it too many times when I have house guests,
Right.
like if somebody was at my house for a week, I'd try to do it once or like lunches being leftover dinner
Yeah.
or, something along the lines of like, oh, we grilled a ton of extra veg or we grilled a ton of extra chicken and like we're going to repurpose that. I did it on purpose so that we can
Yeah.
repurpose it for something else.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
like that. So we did a budgeting podcast episode several years ago. I think it might have been in our very first year of
Mhm.
podcasting. And I remember one of the main things that we did, that both of us did in that episode, was we purposefully meal planned in a way where our recipes coordinated with each other. And of course, that was to save money so that, it's
Mhm.
like we were only buying chicken and we were able to kind of like buy it in bulk and use it for multiple recipes. But that also helped us. I remember that really helped me reduce the food waste that I had that week because I was trying to make sure that all of the food that we were using got used up.
Mhm.
Like, I think a
Yeah.
lot of the times when we talk about food waste, the two main benefits are number one, you're not throwing that food in the trash, but then the result of that is it's also not wasted money. You spent money on this
Mhm.
food and then it didn't end up in the trash, you actually ended up consuming it. So like if you're buying chicken, have multiple recipes that use chicken. If you're buying a cabbage, have multiple recipes that you're going to use it for, or at least know what the potential end goal for that is.
Mhm.
Like I bought a cabbage last week for stir fry. I personally love buying cabbage because you can use part of a cabbage and it can still hang out in your fridge for like 5 days and it's not going to get like limp and weird.
Mhm.
It's very hardy, so it takes a while for it to go bad.
Right.
So it's like I bought a cabbage last week for stir fry. I used like not probably not even a quarter of it. Stir fry is one of those meals where there's so many vegetables in there that like I'm not going to use a whole half of a head of
Mhm.
cabbage. Like I said, maybe like a quarter of it. And then this week I ate basically the rest of the head of the cabbage all by myself
Whoa.
because I turned it into slaw.
Mhm.
And then I ate it as like a side with basically every meal
Mhm.
with lunch and with dinner. Because I personally love just like a really simple slaw with like cabbage and some shredded carrots, salt, pepper, some garlic, and like lime juice and a little bit of olive oil. Like I
Nice.
love that so much. It like so crunchy. When I first make it, I literally can't stop eating it out of the bowl
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's just so good.
And
Um,
that saves so well.
it saves so
Mhm.
well. I mean, I just finished it for lunch today, but like it was in my fridge for like 4 days. It's like
Mhm.
it's still crunchy and delicious even on day 4. So anyways,
My kids also really like cabbage slaw, but my hack
yeah.
on this is that I had my daughter make it one day,
Oh, okay.
and, like, I made her taste it and see if it needed salt. I made her taste it to see if it needed something else, and ever since the day she made it, she's been obsessed with slaw. She's like,
Oh,
"Oh, can we
yeah.
have slaw? Oh, I love
Yeah.
slaw. Let's have slaw with that." And I'm like, "You got it."
But anyways, all that to say, that was like a long tangent about the
Mhm.
cabbage. That's just to say like when you are creating your meal plan, if part of your point of making a meal plan is to waste less food, do your best to coordinate the ingredients that you're buying. That could be like keeping things in the similar cuisine
Mhm.
vein, right?
Mhm.
Like instead of having like Mexican one night, Asian the next night, Italian the third night, Greek the fourth night, like
Mhm.
those can involve lots of things that don't necessarily a lot of different flavors where you're not buying the same herbs or additional vegetables or something to go
Mhm.
in them. So trying to like keep things coordinated I think is really important for wasting less food.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it can be a tricky game to play, the,
Yeah.
like, coordinating your recipes.
It definitely takes
Um
more effort.
It does, it
Yeah.
does. And I think we've talked about this before. I remember saying this on the episode. It's just like it's almost like playing like Jenga. Like you've
Uh-huh.
got to figure out how these things go together. particularly with things you're not using up. We're not talking about like, "Oh, we'll buy extra." Like we're
Yeah.
saying, if you've got a leftover head of cabbage or if you're using half a container of chicken broth. That's one of my
Yeah.
least favorite things is when a recipe, not a soup, a recipe calls for chicken broth and it's like 1 cup or a half, like one of those like 32-ounce, like square rectangle
Yeah.
containers,
Yeah.
like half of that. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? Just sitting in my fridge. Like it needs to
Totally.
have a plan. And so, this is one of the beautiful things about Plan to Eat because you are looking at a recipe, you see how much it calls for. You can either buy a smaller container of something, like the chicken broth example, vegetable stock, whatever you're working with. You could buy less, like a can of it. Or if you know you're going to have leftovers, you could say, okay, what can I do with that next? So if you use that in some kind of like stir fry, Asian sauce, like a lot of Asian dishes come with add chicken stock, for the liquid part.
Yeah.
The next day you could use it in a pasta.
Yeah.
And so just like making sure you're looking at what your recipe is calling for, either buying appropriate amounts, or if you're trying to save money, oftentimes you're buying more items, because like you can buy a bigger thing of chicken stock because it costs less than the can, etc. Or if you want the purple cabbage and this is our option, you're gonna coordinate it and put that into the next recipe. It just takes a little practice and just some intentionality.
Right. Yeah, and I think in general, the coordination, because people might be listening and being like, yeah, that makes the meal planning take so much longer.
Mhm.
I don't think it's absolutely necessary. However, I do think it's more important for foods that don't freeze well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Yes.
I don't personally think that I would freeze cabbage. I know you can freeze
Hmm.
cabbage, but I'm not
Hmm.
really sure that I would. So I'm thinking things like fresh tomatoes. Unless you're okay with freezing them and making tomato sauce or something
Hmm.
later, I'm not normally freezing tomatoes. I'm definitely not freezing lettuce. I personally don't freeze dairy products
Hmm.
very often because they have a very specific use then when they come out of the freezer.
Right.
But if
Except
you
for
have
butter.
some,
Butter works great
yeah,
in the freezer.
butter, yeah, butter's a different story. But I'm thinking like yogurt
Totally.
or milk or
Milk,
something.
yes.
Yeah. Um,
Half and half, heavy cream, any of those would be strange. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Unless you're like, oh, I definitely know I'm going to use that in like a soup or something.
Mhm.
But if you just end up with extra chicken, the chicken can really easily go into the freezer,
Mhm.
whether it's cooked or
Even
not.
cooked, yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So I just think it's something that if you are like, wow, this sounds stressful to make my meal plan in a way that my recipes are coordinated, I think that the thing that you could just prioritize are these like super fresh things that
Mhm.
don't freeze as well.
Yeah. One of my recent things that I've been doing quite a bit is buying a rotisserie chicken
Mhm.
and freezing half of it and using half of it, and it has worked incredibly well. Also, if you're buying them from Costco, the price point is
So good.
pretty great. So it does cut down on food cost, which is really helpful. And I've been using it in things like pot pie or like a chicken and like that copycat chicken and gnocchi soup from Olive Garden. I
Mhm.
love that soup. It works awesome in there. It works awesome in a white chicken chili. Like I've been repurposing that frozen chicken for that. And I know that wasn't your exact example, but I just wanted to like mention this. It has been saving me a lot of money on meat at the store, but it's also just like going so much further because I'm taking it off the bone, I'm cleaning the chicken, and I'm immediately chopping it and freezing it. And so it's
Mhm.
just going way further. I'm not having to come up with something in my like, oh, it's in the fridge. We've got to eat that.
Right.
It's already got a job. And going into the
Yeah.
freezer is a job at my house.
Right. Right.
Like
Yeah.
it's going to be used. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is another one of our tips, and it's a nice segue here. Is that as we learned from reading Carol Ann's book, you
Hmm.
can freeze anything,
Yes. Yep.
and so I think that that's something important to remember when we're thinking about food waste. Is if you're going to throw it in the trash, is it possible you could freeze it
Hmm.
instead? There
Hmm.
are certainly some times where things have gone too far and they got lost in the back of the refrigerator or something, and they do just need to be tossed. Particularly if you have a stuffed refrigerator.
Hmm.
Some people's refrigerators are stuffed. Riley is raising her hand. But if you happen to catch it beforehand, just think about, could I pop this in the freezer instead? And we'll think about it for a recipe in the future. Does it need to be blanched really quick before I put it in the freezer? Should it be prepared in some sort of way before putting it in the freezer? I'm thinking if you have parsley or something that's getting wilted, you can chop that up and you can freeze it in like butter or olive oil
Hmm.
cubes, and then use that for future recipes. So clearly that takes a little bit of time, but I think if the goal overall is to avoid food waste, typically things can be frozen.
Sometimes with herbs, you can even put them on your counter in some water and they perk back up.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Another helpful tip here for avoiding food waste is avoiding obscure ingredients unless you've got a very specific plan for them.
Yeah.
So, obscure I can't talk. Obscure ingredients that I'm thinking about are like I have miso paste, and it's kind of a big container of miso paste. It's the
It
only
is.
thing our grocery store had. I wanted it for a very specific purpose. A little goes a long way.
Yeah.
And now I've just got it. And so, like, I unfortunately have this obscure ingredient that I did want. And I
Yeah.
had for a specific recipe, for specific recipes, plural. But now I need to plan around it because I do not want it to go bad in my fridge. And that is the
Right.
kind of thing that would get pushed to the very back and not something like pepperoncini peppers, which are still going to be great in a month. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking, I feel like it was maybe one of our early dinner dilemmas. A person said that they had like a daikon radish or
Yeah.
something that they didn't know how to use up the rest of it. They had used it for a specific Asian recipe and then they were like, this is a huge radish. I don't know how to use the rest of it. So that is an instance where if it's an obscure ingredient like that,
Mhm.
think of maybe 2 different recipes that call for that specific
Mhm.
ingredient.
Or yeah, I mean, this is a situation where like you could buy the smallest one possible at the store,
Yeah.
double your recipe so you're using it all, or plan 2 recipes for it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, potentially if it's a recipe that freezes well, the whole recipe freezes well, you
Yes.
could batch cook it and then have a frozen recipe in your freezer to pull out later. But yeah, I think this is a good thing to think of in general is if you are constantly finding that things are getting pushed to the back of the fridge
Mhm.
and it's something that you only used in a single recipe, either how can we plan multiple recipes to use this thing up or can we maybe use can we maybe go without this random obscure ingredient, or can we
Mhm.
work around it? Is there like a substitution that's more common in other recipes?
Yeah. Yeah, I specifically for your daikon example, I don't even know why I just pulled this out of my brain. I hope I gave this person the example in our dinner dilemma, but there's a recipe author, I think her name is Ali Mafucci. But anyway, she had a blog for a long time called Inspiralized, and
Oh,
she would use vegetables as pasta, as rice. And literally obscure vegetable central.
yeah.
And she has tons of daikon radish recipes.
Oh, amazing.
Tons. Ginger daikon radish rice with gochujang and fried eggs, chicken
Ooh,
biryani, lots of options. So like if you are ending up with with this ingredient, you really wanted to make something with it, be very exciting. Like go Google, like
yeah,
Google recipes. Like best way to eat a daikon is a Google search result that just came up for me when I was checking
totally.
for this blog. So just like that's another option is if you're like, well, I don't have any recipes. I have no idea what else I would eat this in. This one you get to get exciting. Go Google, find a new recipe, add it to your meal plan, use up all those ingredients. And don't buy more obscure ingredients in the process.
So true. So true.
Which could happen. I could see it.
It could, for sure. Okay, Riley, I'm curious what things end up getting thrown away often in your house.
Mm, well, that half a head of cabbage. And I think the thing about like making the slaw is amazing, but you were intentional to do it.
Right.
And so if I have overplanned, if my meal plan is booked, if I'm not at home for lunch, things along those lines, like those ingredients like just get pushed aside and pushed aside and pushed aside.
Yeah. Or if you
Um
plan something that like slaw doesn't necessarily go well with, I'm
it's
thinking like you planned a breakfast casserole for dinner and you're like, I don't really think
yeah,
cabbage slaw goes well with that.
yeah, exactly. The last cup of spinach like in the like container
I think I've got one of
sometimes.
those in my fridge right now.
And I mean I am pretty good about using up, but like it's like the last like handful
Yeah,
just goes bad. Which spinach freeze is great, and that can go in
totally.
a smoothie so easy. Leftover casserole, especially if we've eaten it 2 or more times. And
And
casserole
everybody's
is
just tired of it.
yes, and casserole is one of those things where it's like, dude, how did I make enough food for an army? I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
This literally happened to me 2 weeks ago. I made a buffalo chicken casserole, which was very delightful
Mm.
the first 2 times we ate it. And then by the 3rd time I was eating it, I was like, I need to be done. And so, thankfully, the only thing that was left over was about 3/4 of a cup of it, and I was just like, "It's just gotta go. We
Yeah.
gotta be done here." Those are common things that go bad. Cilantro.
Yeah.
Cilantro, unfortunately, goes bad really quickly, and I need to be much better about putting it in the jar of water on my countertop because it does so well in that situation. But, like, in
Mhm.
my fridge, it is a one and done use, and I hate that. I
Yeah.
actually hate buying cilantro. I love cilantro in food.
Yeah.
Hate buying it because I'm afraid of that. It's gonna go bad.
Yeah. Well, see, and this is part of the reason why I make something like a slaw, because my cilantro also gets used
Yeah,
with the
mhm.
cabbage.
Yes. We make this, like, delicious, like, cilantro lime, like, ranch kind of
Ooh,
sauce to
yeah.
go on
Mhm.
tacos, and that is our best, like, use it or lose it with the cilantro.
Mhm.
Also, like, if we have, like, a rogue jalapeno, that's perfect in there too. Like,
Yeah.
taking those things and turning them to a sauce is just ideal.
Yeah, I guess you could, like, when after you froze cilantro, you could use it in a sauce. That would
Mhm,
be, like, the best purpose for it after the
mhm.
fact is, like, blending it up into, like, a
Yeah.
chimichurri or a different
Yeah,
sauce.
or a freeze dryer. If you had a freeze dryer at your house,
Oh.
then make, like, the flakes that you can buy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, the things that I think that I most often throw away are if I happen to buy spring mix, not like just plain cabbage or plain spinach, although like I said, I do think I have spinach right now in my fridge. I should probably just put it in the freezer. But like the bag of spring mix that's like a bunch of stuff, that because I feel like it gets slimy. Sometimes that gets slimy faster than other
It
lettuce
does.
products, and so I just end up throwing that one away often. I have stopped buying spring mix, basically because I don't like the slimy.
Yeah, because I think because they go bad at different rates.
Yeah, probably.
And it's like, I would rather just buy the one pure
Yeah,
pure
just
ingredient,
pure lettuce.
like just romaine or like
Yeah,
just baby lettuce or whatever.
exactly.
Because like when you mix them, they go bad at different rates, and then you get like that like blob that you
Yeah,
ugh, don't even get me started.
that's gonna
Just
make
kidding.
me start gagging.
Yeah,
Okay.
everyone listening is like, "Riley, stop." I'm sorry.
Tomato paste in a jar, similar to what you were saying earlier with the chicken broth,
Mhm.
is if a recipe calls for just like a tablespoon of tomato paste, and I don't have because like, sometimes I'll buy the, like,
Yes. Yeah.
squeezy version, but if I sometimes our grocery store is out of those, and so
Yes,
I
they
have
are
to
right
buy
now.
yeah, and so I have to buy cans of tomato paste, and then I'm like, "1 tablespoon is like an eighth of this. Like, what am
Yeah.
I know you can freeze the rest of it. I should be better about just, like, immediately putting it into a different container and freezing it, but I often am like, "It's fine. I'll think of a way to use it later this week." I never do, and then it's moldy.
Mm-mm.
And also mushrooms. Mushrooms often go bad in my fridge because basically, like, the only thing I'll use mushrooms for is unless it's something like stroganoff, where the main vegetable is a mushroom. The only other time I buy mushrooms are for something like a stir fry.
Mhm.
I know you mentioned you really like mushrooms in ramen, and I need
Mhm.
to, like, log that away for the next because I think I mentioned I use ramen as, like, a kitchen clean out
Mm,
sort
yeah.
of a meal. Uh, so I need to remember that, but mushrooms often go bad, and also because 'cause mushrooms can kinda get slimy quick too, I think, and so I'm very particular about that happening,
Mhm. I think any canned good that you use half of is really hard to deal with.
except for canned corn because I just eat it out of the can because I think it's
Oh, well, that's you.
delicious.
That's not most people. Yeah, I struggle. I was the one that came to mind when you were talking about tomato paste, which is another one that I struggle with, is chipotle peppers,
Oh,
like the
yeah.
can of them. If we use half,
Yeah.
and because I have kids, like you can't use the whole container because
Yeah, you
everyone
can't just be
will,
like, "It's fine, we'll just dump the whole thing in."
that is not an it's fine ingredient.
Yeah.
Because 'cause they're so spicy, and so but I have found that freezing those works incredibly well. And I am pretty good about doing it because I know we use Chipotle so rarely that
Right.
I am pretty good about it because I know I'm not gonna, like, just find a use for that tomorrow.
Yeah, well, and typically the use for those, like, chipotle peppers and adobo sauce that's what you're talking about, right?
Yep, yeah.
Yeah. Is it's, like, in a sauce or,
Mhm.
like, the saucy part of a entree, and so freezing it, it doesn't get weird when you
Yes.
then take it out and put it in something.
Alright, Ronnie, how do you plan with what you already have on hand?
I guess I am fortunate enough that I have a pretty good memory for the things that are in my refrigerator or the things that are in the freezer. Granted, we often have a freezer that is already pretty stocked with meat.
Mhm.
And so when I'm making my meal plan, I can basically just assume anything that I put on the meal plan that calls for like a beef product, we have some alternative for it.
Mhm.
Usually it's like venison or elk. It's not necessarily beef, but I just use those interchangeably for the most part. So when I'm meal planning, I often think like, okay, whatever it is, I can just use like a beef something and we'll just use something that's in the freezer. I'm not going to need to buy that. So that's just always in the back of my mind. But because I meal plan weekly, I think it's easier for me to kind of keep track of what are the things that are in the fridge that are maybe lingering from the last meal plan. However, I also will manually go in and check and make sure that
Mhm.
we have things. I think that's just like the way to make sure that it happens
Mhm.
is I go in and manually check, look in my fridge, look in the pantry, and just look at the things that we have because inevitably I'll think we have a bag of rice or something and we
Mhm.
actually don't. We used the last of the rice the last time I made rice or something like that. But I think that's the most important thing is just kind of keeping track, even if it's a loose mental list or a loose written down list
Mhm.
of what you have on hand. That's like the for me, that's the best place to start. But often the recipes that I plan when I'm trying to plan from what I have on hand, they're kind of like my tried and true recipes because they often involve a lot of similar flavors, similar sauces, similar condiments,
Mhm.
and so it's just stuff that I know we already have.
Mhm. And you're very used to making it and
I'm used
probably
to making
winging
it.
it too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or there are things like how I mentioned ramen, where I'm just like, I can put ramen on the meal plan and whatever is left over, that's just gonna go in the ramen. It's not a big
Mhm.
deal.
Yeah. Those are great options. I love that you have such a good memory for what's in your fridge. I don't.
Well,
I
you have
don't.
a few more things going on in your life than I do.
No, I don't think that's the reason. I just think that it's a little bit of an abyss sometimes. So things that I've done recently this week, I actually I might have mentioned this last podcast. Like I was not meal planning this week.
Yeah.
If we didn't have it, we weren't eating. And so I tried to be really intentional with with what we did end up eating this week because, well, one because I had to because I wasn't meal planning or grocery shopping. I just needed a break. To be very honest, I just needed a break. And so thankfully, I did end up buying a few ingredients. Like I did end up having to, mostly because we had nothing fresh.
Mm,
But how I planned with what I had on hand, I had leftover tzatziki from some Greek bowls, and so I knew I wanted to do that again. Still had cucumber, still had olives, still had tomatoes. So I knew that'd be a really quick and easy thing to put together. Just make some rice with a protein or without a protein. I actually am taking a card out of your playbook. What I don't know how to say that. A play out of your playbook. What?
yeah, sure. Let's go with it.
Yeah, and I'm making homemade hamburger helper this week,
Yeah.
and the
I
only thing I bought was tomato paste. I had
like
everything
it.
else. Yeah, so that was awesome. We ended up having ramen, and kinda like you, it was a bit of a kitchen sink ramen. It was like, "Well, we've got some veg, I've got some chicken thighs I could thaw out of the freezer, like, this is how oh, got some boiled eggs. This is how we're gonna make this, throw it together." I used the miso,
Yep.
my
Yep.
obscure ingredient, and then I found this recipe for like a sticky beef and peanut noodle situation. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
use I haven't made this yet,
Okay.
but I'm gonna use the rest of my ramen noodles, the rice noodles that I had for this dish. I've already got the beef. I've already got the broccoli in the freezer. I've already got. I make a homemade peanut sauce. It's really easy. I forgot everything for that. So that's gonna come together, and I didn't have to buy anything for it. Breakfast for dinner is still on our radar because we didn't have it the other night. So that is what we're up to. And those are all things I had on hand. Just like
Yeah.
looking in my pantry and saying, okay, I've got these rice noodles. What am I going to do with them? I've got macaroni. What am I going to do with that? I've got
Yeah.
macaroni and I've got beef. And I just kind of like trying to like play those things together. Like, what am I going to do with these things?
Yeah. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a tip for Planteat customers, I guess it can be for anybody if you don't use Planteat for your shopping list, but I'm just thinking the thing that saves me the most is going through my Planteat shopping list and making sure that I take off the things that we already have
Mm-hmm.
at home. And again, this is where like my memory can fail me
Mhm.
sometimes, where, like I said, I think that we have rice and then we maybe don't end up having it. I thought that maybe I bought 2 bags of rice last time and I only bought 1, something like that. So, it just is really important if you are trying to cut down on food waste to go through your fridge and your pantry and your freezer and cross things off. Sometimes I'll be in the grocery store and have not done that process and then be second guessing myself, like looking at my phone and being like, wait, but how many cans of beans do we have at
Mhm.
home? I don't remember.
Mhm.
Do I have only 1 or do I have 2? This recipe calls for 2. So
Mhm.
it's a do your future self a favor situation, and don't just rely on your memory. While I said I have a good memory for these things, I the memory part is more when I'm actually meal planning,
Yeah.
but then I don't rely on my memory when it comes to crossing things off.
Mhm. Just to piggyback off of that, one of my favorite things about the shopping list is the ingredient amounts,
Yeah,
because this is when repurposing leftovers and your shopping list they work together seamlessly.
right.
If you're making, let's say, like a Tuscan chicken pasta and you're going to add heavy cream to it, because a lot of those call for that, and it calls for half a cup of heavy cream or a fourth of a cup of cream, like, do you
Mhm.
have that already? Like,
No.
are you going to throw it away if not? Like,
Right.
and if you don't, obviously you need to buy it. But if you do have it, like, use that last little smidge up and then
Yeah,
you're good. It's just a really, really, really helpful, just like beautiful feature of the shopping list.
yeah. I mean, let me just say anytime that I have a recipe that's like a soup or a pasta or something that calls for either half and half or heavy cream, because we don't really use half and half in our coffee
Hmm.
much. And then we like never have a use for heavy cream other than a recipe. Just make dessert with the
Yeah.
rest of the thing. Like I will often make homemade pudding with the
Yeah.
rest of whatever, either half and half or heavy cream that we have. And then you could have a delicious homemade dessert.
Hmm. Love it. My husband always likes to make homemade rice pudding with leftover rice.
Oh, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Which you
That's
can
a
also use. I
frequent
mean,
thing.
usually I think I would use milk in that, but you could use half and half if you
Yeah,
happen to have leftover half and half.
you
That'd
totally
be
can. And you're also
extra
using up your
rich
leftover rice, because
and
leftover rice
delicious.
can get a little, it's
It
kind of
can.
dry.
And honestly, while I do promote taking your leftover rice and putting it in the freezer, I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure I have some leftover rice in the freezer that I continually forget about. And I just keep making new batches of rice. And then every time I open the freezer, I'm like, we had rice in the freezer. It's just not something I normally freeze. So that's why it keeps getting
Hmm.
left in the freezer.
I understand. You got to do a freezer inventory every once in a while and
You
see what you
really
got.
do. You really do.
Yeah.
I think on this note, we sort of talked about this a little bit earlier, repurposing leftovers in certain ways. We were kind of talking about it when we were having guests over at your house, trying to figure out different ways you could repurpose leftovers. Obviously, we like to have leftovers for lunch, but Riley has mentioned multiple times that like your husband is not really like a
No.
leftovers person. So you do kind of have to figure out for certain people, you do have to figure out ways of repurposing leftovers that aren't just we're eating the same meal 2, 3, 4 times during
Hmm.
this week.
Hmm.
And one thing that is since it's, wintry right now that I really like to do is if you have leftover vegetables from whatever from however you made them, but just like vegetables that are by themselves, not vegetables that are already mixed with something. You roasted some vegetables on a sheet pan or you grilled some vegetables, something like that, is that you can put them in the blender with some cream or some
Hmm.
broth and you can turn them into a soup, and
Hmm.
just like put it on the
Hmm.
stove to heat it up. So good. And like really can have like a really good depth of flavor depending on the variety of vegetables that you
That's
have.
really true. Yeah. Yeah. I can see that being amazing, like a roasted vegetable, like at the end of the summer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a roasted vegetable soup. You could have it with like a grilled cheese
Yeah.
sandwich.
Yeah.
Super easy.
Super easy.
Soup.
Trying to think if I have any unique things to mention about repurposing leftovers, because I know I've mentioned a lot of ways that I do this.
Yeah.
And I guess I can mention those if you're a new listener. I would love to share them. I just don't want to be a broken record.
Yeah.
And you and I tend to be broken records. So,
Okay. Well, I have a question for you because I've
oh
been
yeah.
wondering this. If you were somebody who doesn't like smoothies,
Hmm.
how would you repurpose like fruit that's starting to go bad? Or say we have this like spinach where you're like, well, I could just put it into a smoothie or something. But if you're not a smoothie person, I know there's a lot of people out there who are not smoothie people.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times they're like, if they buy like a thing of strawberries and they don't get to all the strawberries, they might put them in the freezer, but they never do anything. They might
Yeah.
not ever do anything with it because they're like, I don't really know how to use these strawberries unless they're fresh. Like, what would you do with fruit if you were not a smoothie person?
Well, with the spinach, I would make curry and add the
Oh, yeah.
spinach to a curry.
Perfect.
With the fruit, I would say like a pie or
Mhm.
like a galette, like a pretty open-faced like pie, kind of rough crust pie. You could also make bread, like a strawberry bread, raspberry bread, banana bread, pick a bread, add a fruit to it. That's what I would do. If you're not a smoothie person, I actually used to not be a smoothie person at all.
Yeah.
But I also used to not be a fruit person. And so like as I've grown in my love for fruit, I've grown in my love for smoothies. But that's what I would do. I would probably use it in some kind of like a muffin, like something that
Yeah.
becomes like a really helpful quick grab and go breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a good tip. Yeah.
Yeah. I did hear about this new tool that's like an on-counter composter that's like silent and it like literally kind of turns everything into coffee grounds for you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure I heard about it on a podcast, a little bit of a podcast junkie, but there is that, like if you have a garden and you collect compost, like that is a useful way to repurpose your things that are going bad. And then it doesn't feel like waste because it is going to be repurposed in your garden or it's going to be repurposed as feed for your chickens or whatever animals you might have. I mean, within reason, what animals would eat those kinds of things, but
Right.
it can just be, I mean, like it doesn't have to go in the trash.
Right. Yeah. I
And
like that.
so, I mean, even if you don't use compost, you might know someone who does. So,
Yeah, that's so true.
mhm.
All right. Well, it probably wraps us up for today.
Mhm.
And thank you, as always, for listening. We will talk to you in 2 weeks.